Hello, everyone. It's evening where I am, so I'll say good evening, but I know there are folks here that are in all kinds of time zones, so welcome. I am Lisa Riley. I'm the executive director here at Profectum. I use she, her pronouns, and it is a great joy to welcome you to this evening's Visionary Lecture Series, A Meaningful Life, Creating Community Where Adults with Developmental Differences Can Thrive with Deborah Flaschen. Before we get started, I just want to say that we've been thinking a lot about families here at Perfectum over the last week. And as we come together tonight for learning and community, we are keenly aware that there are substantial and ongoing conflicts in the world that are disrupting families' lives in truly terrible, life-changing ways. For all of those families and individuals and all of those of you who are with us who may be impacted, we want you to know how much you are in our minds and our hearts. We are sending you strength and love. And to all of you who are doing the work to serve those families and individuals, we want to send you, again, lots of strength and love and thanks. You are needed now as much as ever before. And we are so grateful for you and that you are able to help restore stability and hope for those who are suffering. So please know that that's much on all of our minds and in our hearts, and we are thinking of you. So thank you. While I'm doing a little bit of housekeeping, please feel free to continue to share in the chat where are you joining us from and say hello. This session is being recorded and will be available for 1 week until Thursday, March 19th. Oh, I've had to really think about that date, even though it was right in front of me. And a link to the recording will be sent to you via email. We are extraordinarily proud of Profectum's podcast, Tuning into Development, with our own host, Cassie Allison. You can listen to the podcast any place you can find podcasts on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and so on. We have over 6,000 downloads in just over a year, and we're super excited about it. The current episode is with a guest host, Deb Sussman, speaking to our own Ruby Salazar. It's a great way to tune in and think about families and how we serve them and what they need. And we'd love to have you check out all the episodes anywhere you listen to podcasts. Our next visionary lecture, which is coming up in May, is Rewiring Discipline, Understanding the Nervous System's Role in Behavior with Lori Desitels. Please take note that that is at a different time of the day. That is on a Wednesday, May 14th, but it is during the day Eastern US time from 12 to 1:30 p.m. You can stay connected with Perfectum and sign up for that other visionary lecture and do all of those, keep up with all things Perfectum on our website at perfectum.org. Great way to find us is to follow us on our social media, including LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, where you can get the most up-to-date information. Perfectum is committed to providing programs without barriers to attendance for everyone. That's part of the reason we are so pleased to offer the Visionary Lecture Series free of charge. Funding for the Visionary Lecture Series is provided in part by the Profectum Educational Endowment Fund honoring Serena Weider, PhD, and by donors like you. If you've already made a donation on your way to registering for this evening's event, thank you so much. If you have the means and are able to make a donation, we really very much appreciate it, and no donation is too small to be meaningful. Your donations support excellent learning opportunities that are accessible to everyone. A couple of minor housekeeping things. The chat will be open during the presentation for you to send your questions to Tyler Schote once the presentation begins. Tyler will be collecting your questions so that he can synthesize them and have a conversation with Deborah after the presentation. So please, as you think of them, send those questions along to Tyler. It will also be open for you to send any tech issues to Beth Arena or Emily Hetrick. They can help. If you do experience any technical difficulties, you can leave the meeting and come back using the same Zoom link, which is often the best way to solve those problems. We love when you leave your cameras on because we love to see you, but please do whatever makes you feel most comfortable and most able to lean into the learning. The closed captions are available in the language of your choice. There was a loop right before we started talking, so hopefully you've been able to make that decision so that you are at ease in your language of choice. And with that, I am very pleased to turn the evening over to our good friend and Profectum faculty member, Cindy Harrison, who will be introducing our speaker for this evening and is joining us from afar. So Cindy, please take it away and thank you so much.
Thank you, Lisa. I just wanted to say I will try and keep my camera on, but we're in the Caribbean on vacation, and the internet here, along with everything else in the Caribbean, works on its own time and space and wavelength. So if my camera goes off, I will still be here, but trying to stay connected to the internet. So it is my great honor to introduce to you someone that I met very early in my own journey, Deborah Flaschen, who has been my friend since, I'm going to date us now, Deborah, the late 1990s, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Deborah is an extraordinary human being, and she is one of the people that has one foot in the corporate world. She has an MBA from Wharton and has worked in very high level at project management. You can take a look on the Profectum website to get her bio. But Deborah's most profound, most important job position has been as a parent. And Deborah is going to talk to us tonight about 3L Place. And I'm so excited for you to hear Deborah talk about her frustration with traditional models and the limitations of especially adult disability services. And Deborah and her team have created a model that I think it's fair to say can be replicated elsewhere in the USA and in Canada and the world. And it's a model that is very aligned because Deborah has been very aligned with DIR in emphasizing self-direction, choice, building a meaningful life. And 3L, I believe, was founded in 2014. Deborah, you'll tell me if I'm wrong on that. And really is the extension of DIR. And just being able to or wanting to give a few personal anecdotes. I met Deborah when I was at a conference that was being held in Crystal City, I think, in DC in the late 1990s. I was the parent of a then 21-month-old who had been diagnosed with autism, a speech pathologist, feeling so lost. And I met Deborah and Ricky Robinson, and they immediately took me under their wing and introduced me to a powerhouse of incredible parents, many of whom I'm still in touch with today. And if there's one thing I can tell you about Deborah is when Deborah says, I'm envisioning this, I'm thinking we should, two things. It's going to happen and it's going to be impactful. Deborah is a leader. She's a listener. She's a dreamer, but most importantly, she's a doer. So, Deborah, from that mom of the 21-month-old who is now 29 and, finding his own way, getting ready to move out into his own place, his own apartment. This is something that is just the culmination of so much for me. So without further ado, I am so pleased to turn the floor over to my longtime friend, Deborah Flaschen.
My goodness, that's kind of chokes me up a bit. But it's been a long, wonderful friendship. And I will correct you, we incorporated 3L Place in 2009 and worked on curriculum for 3+ years and then opened our doors in 2014. But now people need to bear with me as I attempt to share my screen. Pardon me, this is not my forte. There's share my screen. And there's this and share. And let's see, where is my presenter option? Pardon me. I'm very fortunate at 3L Place. People take care of me by helping me with technology. Ah, there we are.
Looks good,
Um,
Deborah.
thank you. So I am I'm very excited to be here and honored by the very generous comments made. And I am a doer. That I admit I am a doer. I hope to spend no more than 45 minutes reviewing my slides with you all. And then I really think the question and answer period is going to be the most meaningful part of this conversation. So, and also at the end of my slides, I have a resource slide to provide you with links to some of the resources that I find valuable. So, thank you. So, very recently, I was honored to have a conversation with Ricky Robinson about my early days as a floor time DIR parent. I have two wonderful children. I can't believe that they are ages 37 and 35. Um, one is neurotypical and one is not, and he's autistic and pretty wonderful. As I described to Ricky during our hour-long conversation, we discovered floor time when DJ was 3.5 years old. And it took us probably about 9 months because, by the way, we had lived in London until DJ was about 3.5 years old. We arrived in the United States. We found ourselves in an early childhood program. The psychologist there said, you don't really have a diagnosis, do you? And I turned to her and I said, can you recommend a good diagnostician? And she said, Dr. Stanley Greenspan. And I thought, oh, well, where is he? He's local, of course. We're in Chicago, right? And my heart sank when she said he was in the DC area. So it took me a little while after discovering that Dr. Greenspan and Dr. Weeder were in DC to finally get myself there or get ourselves there. And once we got there, once we spent several hours with each Dr. Greenspan and Dr. Weeder, we've never looked back, and we've pursued the key principles of DIR floor time ever since. And they're very much reflected in what we do at 3L Place. In the adult world, because self-determination and human rights are so central to the adult world, the tug of war between, this methodology or that methodology, favoring ABA, favoring floor time, doesn't really carry through. So I just dropped the rope because I didn't think the politics would be helpful. We just wanted to create programming that would support our members to be their best selves and live a life of meaning in the community. So, as I said, personally and professionally, I have used the DIR lens when navigating relationships with humans of all ages, including older people, frankly. I've done that raising both of my children, and that approach is very much embedded in the DNA of 3L Place. First off, we presume competence. We presume the peoplehood of the individuals that we support. We support them developmentally and foster growth that shores up their strengths, their abilities to think, communicate, and set their own goals, pursue their interests and passions. We build trusting, respectful, mutual relationships. We support their emotional and sensory regulation through co-regulation and self-regulation strategies. So here's just a little flashback to my fellow. And the reason I'm bringing up this slide is because we parents, the clinicians in the audience, the educators work so hard to advance the development, regulation, communication, skill development of our kids. And then we drop into the adult world. And this, I think, is a pretty accurate picture of the feeling that parents get when they leave school-based services. You know, Cindy was telling me, I've forgotten already what you said, the black hole. Here, people often refer to it as the cliff. It's just terrifying, and you just are holding on for dear life, trying to get oriented, trying to figure out what you're supposed to do as a parent supporting the continuing development of your now adult children. So, you know, in the world in which IDEA funded your education, which was individualized, those dollars dry up when you hit 21 or 22, depending on the state that you're in. And instead, the money comes from state budgets and Medicaid funding. Because of the financial pinch, there are a large number of individuals who end up being served in, while they're not institutions any longer, they're still pretty big size silos. And the ratios that you encounter are frequently 6 or 7 individuals to one support individual. The staff, though very well-meaning, are often not well-trained, supervised, supported, nor do they have curriculum to support their work. So when my son was 17, I started exploring what was ahead. And I looked at traditional program options offered by our state's Department of Developmental Services. And there were none that offered the growth and community participation that I felt he and his peers deserved. Meanwhile, there was a national movement and in Massachusetts as well towards something called self-direction. And the goals and spirit of self-determination through self-direction were really consistent with my own. And I'll explain that further as we move along. So along with some other parents, we started to build or started to plan to build a program that was personalized and focused on learning, skill building, social opportunities, and inclusion, but also community. And this would be available through self-direction. So I just wanted to review some critical dates for the disabilities community. IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, was passed in 1975. And it was a law that made available free, appropriate public education to eligible children with disabilities and ensure that special education and related services are available to those children. Now, as I was preparing for this, I mean, I knew the general timeline, but I was really surprised that IDEA was passed in 75 because it really didn't kick in for quite some time. There was a lot of litigation. States had to catch up. So I really think it was at a minimum the late 80s, early 90s, where you started seeing the benefits of IDEA at a state and local level. In 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA, was passed, and that was not education law, it was civil rights law, and it prohibited discrimination against individuals with disabilities in a variety of important arenas. A little bit later in the 1990s, the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which was a very large foundation doing a lot of great work in the United States, um, started a pilot program. I believe it was based primarily in California, and it focused most of its resources on the elderly disabled community. And the program was called Cash and Carry. And what it did is it provided budget resources to individuals for them to choose how to use that money to support themselves. And it was very successful. In 1999, there was a major Supreme Court decision that resulted in what we call the Olmstead Act. It wasn't legislation, it was a court decision, but it affirmed the right of individuals with disabilities to live the most integrated settings appropriate to their needs. So this started a mad dash in all states to deinstitutionalize those large state institutions. And I'll a little later I'll go into it was a huge effort to take these institutions with thousands of people and deinstitutionalize. And as a hint of the future, they basically went from large institutions to kind of smaller silos that still were a little institutional. In 2002, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid issued guidance that promoted self-direction opportunities to individuals by supplying matching Medicaid funding through the home and community-based waivers. And this was very significant. It was a big step forward in self-determination. And this is where I always get a little confused. So, and in 2014, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts adopted or enacted the Real Lives Law. Now, I view self-direction as a 21st century adult disability solution. And I'm very thankful that the Robert Wood Johnson started this ball rolling and that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid saw the wisdom of offering choice, flexibility, and self-determination to individuals with disabilities. I also want to say, and Cindy alluded to my past corporate experience, while I'm very much a Democrat, I'm also a bit of a free market person. And I believe that self-direction is a much more economically viable approach because you can leverage private resources as well as public resources through self-direction that you can't through traditional programming because the Center for Medicare and Medicaid kind of encapsulates traditional programming in ways that self-direction is not encapsulated. So the other thing about self-direction is there's been a lot of research, and I provide a link to an organization called the Human Services Research Institute, HSRI. They do a lot of research on self-direction. and they operate all over the country, and they operate as well in Massachusetts and support some of the work that our Department of Developmental Services is doing. And research demonstrates that people living self-determined lives are happier, better employed, educated, and have higher overall quality of life. So we ended up, Massachusetts did adopt the Real Lives Law. It is among the most progressive in the country. The law sponsors were very far reaching in their view. And the notion is that DDS would work together with individuals and families uh, and and provide the same level of budget resources that they would provide in traditional programming to an individual who would then choose how they wanted to spend those resources to further their individual support needs. So there were checks and balances all along on the system. I mean, you couldn't spend your money on things that weren't consistent with what's called your ISP, your individual support plan. So it would be a meaningful expenditure that would further your life in meaningful ways. I'm about to do a 90-degree turn here for a minute. And this is because I think this is a great resource. And I wished I discovered it. I discovered it about 4 or 5 years ago, and I wished I discovered it 10 years ago, or even earlier than that. Life Course Nexus Framework was developed by parents working with educators at the University of Missouri in Kansas City. And I mean, you've heard people talk about life maps and life plans. This is essentially about creating a life map or plan, but this resource provides fabulous tools to families, to teams to develop those maps. And it's just an incredibly flexible tool. It's also very uplifting. The people who've developed it are just, I don't know, I felt a kinship to them as I listened to them talk about what they're trying to accomplish. And I highly recommend to people that they look at it. And frankly, I think, and we'll get into this discussion a little later, it's really important to start young. It's really important to start maybe around age 14 or 15 to start looking at what lies ahead, because you need to do some planning. You need to be prepared for that point where a lot of service support falls away, because it will fall away, and you need to figure out what you're going to fill in underneath. So this is me down here. This is the person pushing up the boulder. So I see self-direction as a 21st century solution. And I have some, economic perspective on it that a real trained economist may or may not agree with. But what we have is we had the Olmstead Act. States spent enormous effort de-institutionalizing, but they were kind of grabbing for solutions, and the solutions were really truly interim solutions, but they've now become permanent solutions. And so it's hard to dislodge them. But you have, and different states did it differently. In the state of Massachusetts, a whole bunch of nonprofit organizations sprung up and created programs for hundreds of individuals. And so you had silos of individuals being supported, albeit they weren't in large institutions any longer. They were in smaller silos, but they were still large numbers of people who aren't necessarily best served by being in a large program. So I kind of feel that we are stuck at that point. I feel in my state we're a bit stuck there. Um, this is all complicated by economics because Americans really aren't willing to spend money or resources to care for individuals with disabilities or the mentally ill or the elderly for that matter. So we've got limited resources that favor economies of scale, silos, and bureaucracies that support that. And you've got high staff to participant ratios because of the economics. And those individuals are not well paid and they're not well supported. Then we have COVID comes along and takes a system that's already really precarious and closes a lot of programs. They lose the staffing they had. When they start to reopen, that staffing says, no, I can make more money, you know, checking groceries or working at a coffee shop than I can working a really tough job in a program where they're responsible for 6 or 7 individuals with lots of challenges. So um, we now have this very significant manpower problem where a lot of programs haven't been able to reopen, and there are a lot of people sitting home with no services at all. And then we have new immigration policies on top of that, that a lot of the manpower that did exist were new immigrants to this country, and they're being chased away. So we've got a lot of challenges, and but it doesn't mean that our population doesn't have very significant needs. So we have at least come up with a solution, albeit, we're not a large program. We will never be a large program because that's not in the best interest of the people we serve. But our program is replicable. Um, so this is the front page of our new website. And our mission, our vision is to empower neurodiverse adults to reach their individual potential, follow their passion, and live meaningful lives. We've built a deeply connected community where everyone feels safe, engaged, and ready to do their best. Did I miss some? Sorry, pardon me. I did. So in getting ready to open 3L Place, we felt a heavy responsibility to make sure we knew how we were supporting them, what we were supporting them with. So we wanted this holistic curriculum that would guide all aspects of our support for our members. And we looked around high and low, didn't find anything that reflected our values and this holistic approach. So we assembled a collaborative, multidisciplinary team of clinicians, therapists, educators, some academicians from Tufts, Harvard, Lesley University, Boston University. And these individuals donated their time and expertise over 2 years to help produce a comprehensive curriculum. This curriculum represents the collective wisdom of more than 40 professionals with frontline expertise with individuals with autism and developmental disabilities. And I must add that over half of these individuals are associated or professionally influenced by the DIR floor time model. Cindy Harrison was one of them. I think I saw some other people in the audience before. I can't see the audience anymore. Were also among those people. So he had a great team. Um, then over, and I want to also make a distinction. So this is kind of a curricular framework or guidance. This doesn't amount to lesson plans, uh, which need, so it needed translation. And that's what the 3L Place staff has done. It's taken this guidance and it's created daily, weekly lessons that we share with the members at 3L Place. Um, this is probably my favorite um, slide, and I call it, it's our core beliefs, but I think it's our special sauce, um, because we have this incredibly cohesive community with a lot of spirit, and you don't achieve that without a belief system that holds you together. And that's very much a part of training staff. Frankly, it's a part of training members and families. We kind of believe um, believe these same things, these same principles, this guidance. So effective learning occurs when learners are calm and regulated. Communication is the foundation for all learning and making meaning of the world. Learning occurs most easily when topics are approached using the members' preferences and interests. Meaningful learning arises more easily from emotionally based experiences. Effective learning happens in the context of a warm, empathetic relationship. Effective teaching encourages learners to become independent seekers and users of knowledge. So, um, this is who we are, and it guides us every day. These people also guide us every day. We have an incredible staff, and uh, you know, in school-based learning, um, there's enough funding for many individuals with significant challenges to have one-to-one supports. That, as I already explained, the adult world is much more resource constrained. So when we were designing 3L Place, we said we're going to do a 1 staff to 3 person ratio. And we also want to make this staff multidisciplinary, which is again very much part of the DIR floor time tradition. And it was also part, in my son's experience, of his high school system. So we have got 6 full-time direct service staff who have we've got masters in social work, we've got expressive art therapists, licensed mental health counselors, an occupational therapist, a speech and language therapist, and a generalist. And this is just our direct service staff. We also have, I mean, we're small, so I'm very proud of this really mighty staff that we have. We also have 2 wonderful operations people who are not pictured. One of them is responsible for these incredibly beautiful slides I have here because I did not create these. Um, so, in addition to these staff, we also uh, have our teaching site for interns from BU. We've got a master's in social work relationship. So we have social work grad students at Lesley University. We have art therapists and licensed mental health counselors. And at Tufts University, we have occupational therapy interns. So we generally have 2 to 3 interns working over the course of each year. And 2 of the people pictured here are people we hired after we had them as interns because we were so excited to have them. I also wanted to mention that our population of members incorporates several diagnostic categories, with autism representing probably approximately 70% of that. But almost all of our members present sensory motor, communication, learning, or regulation challenges. So we need a staff with this level of um, uh, skills in order to support the needs and the talents, because we have lots of talent among our members. Um, our admissions practices, as I said, we're based on a 1 to 3 staffing ratio. And we are also out and about in the community a great deal. So we do have a profile of who is a, a good fit for our program. And which is not to say people who are not good fits for 3L Place don't deserve good programming. But if you're designing something and you want it to be successful, you have to be sensitive to the model that you've adopted. So we have still within our best fit criteria, we have an enormously diverse group of members. We have people who are exceptionally verbal. We have people who are nonverbal and use assistive technology. We have people who are live independently, can travel independently, work part-time. We also have members who live with their families or in shared settings. We have people representing all genders and with different diagnoses, skills, and backgrounds. Um, our commitment when we bring a new member into 3L Place is for that member to thrive in our community and for our community to continue to thrive. So we look at ourselves as kind of this living community. And when we bring in a new member, they need to be somebody who we can all support successfully and who the community can support successfully. And that's kind of this goodness of fit criteria that we've developed. Um, so earlier, maybe I didn't say this, but when we first started 3L Place, the 3Ls were lifelong learning. And, but that, was kind of a commonplace phrase, albeit I think it's still an excellent descriptor. And so we turned our 3Ls into what really represent the 3 strategic pillars of our program, which is living, learning, and linking. So the living is our community in Somerville. And it's a community program of adults with autism and developmental disabilities. Members participate up to 5 days a week near Davis Square in Somerville, which is a very vibrant area. And they have close relationships with fellow members and staff, and they develop important skills um, that we develop using our curriculum. Our learning component is kind of started with the big curriculum project back in the early 2010s, and continues to this day by the development of lessons that our staff create weekly for our members. And the linking piece is about sharing. And that was super important to me because my son was very fortunate to have all of the supports and resources that he was able to access throughout his earlier childhood. And I his tutors, his therapists would create these wonderful learning tools for him. And they were for him. They were for one person. And it just seemed like a horrible waste of resources. So it's always been a commitment that I have to share content, to share ideas. Um, I'm kind of when Wikipedia first came out, I said, this is this is it. This is perfection. So our contribution, our little contribution to Wikipedia is our linking component of our strategy. Um, this is the slide that I kind of think of. I don't know if people, so I'm from Boston, and I don't know if you know about the Cheers bar and the show Cheers. So this is kind of my Cheers moment. Um, you might not have experienced anything like Thrill Place, but you'll recognize that it's special as soon as you step in our community room. And I can't see everything here. Um, the buzz of energy and camaraderie that also offers a sense of calm. Three Place members are living their best lives, making their own decisions and developing new skills every day. Families are making friends and building networks, and everyone knows they matter. At 3L Place, you'll find low staffing ratio of one staffer for every 3 members, personalized skill development work, a lively facility that members look forward to, with plenty of calm spaces to take a break, support for vocational interest and skill refinement, explorations of what it means to be a citizen and part of many communities, opportunities to become more aware of our bodies, minds, their connection, and our health, passionate discussions of the world, our lives, and the things we're learning, constant connection. Um, I skipped one. Constant connection, learning about one another and making decisions together, daily outings exploring the neighborhood and the Boston area, and highly satisfied families who report that they would recommend us to friends or fellow parents. Now, why is this not? Sorry, I think I pushed this down and sorry, I'm not sure why. Next page. Okay, there we go. Um, So, this, when you take our curriculum guidance, um, and you kind of boil it down to how you share that information, how you develop lesson plans for that information, this is how we've kind of organized that and organize the goals that our members choose for themselves. But this is a framework for them to choose from or to structure their thinking about goals. So we have 5 categories: self-care and responsibility, social connectedness and communication, citizenship, creative expression, vocational readiness. I do want to say regarding vocational readiness, we are not a program that supports individuals on work sites. That's not our bag. Our bag is helping people identify what their job interests are, developing some pre-vocational skills, and then setting people up with employment providers who can support them. Um, Citizenship is my favorite category. Um, Values, kindness, acceptance, integrity, community participation, awareness of culture, ethnicities, neurodiversity, community safety. I do want to say one of the things that's super important to me is that just as our individuals have the right to expect accommodations to support their neurodiversity, we also explain that they have responsibilities to the society in which they live. And so I think it's a really important two-sided coin that we try hard to emphasize. self-care, social connectedness, communication, creative expression. They're all critical elements of what we do every day at 3L Place. All right, so again, I'm sorry, I'm just, for some reason, it's, okay. Community comments. These are just, I'm indulging myself in sharing some really nice things that people say about us. There, a couple are from parents and a couple are, or one is from one of our members. For our family, Thrill Place is far more than a program. They are trusted partners walking alongside us on a road that was never built with neurodivergent travelers in mind. I think that's just an absolutely beautiful expression. The beating heart of this place was respect, and everything we saw there sprouted from that seed. And it has taught me to be more sociable. I'm always trying, but teaches you to be more independent. We have a lot of different people coming here for a lot of different reasons, and we're willing to help and learn how to help other people, other adults who need help in different areas, independence as well as life skills, as well as working in a group. So, just I'm almost at the end, guys. Um, I just wanted to share a little bit about how self-direction works. I had alluded to to there being kind of two options now that the Center for Medicare and Medicaid says there's a traditional service model and there's a self-directed model. And self-direction doesn't always work this way, provide those who choose self-direction the same budget as they would get in traditional services. And that budget should be based on assessed need. Um, and an individual who chooses self-direction then can use their budget to employ or to employ individual employees or choose vendors, providers like 3L Place. They get to create their own schedule. So for instance, most of the members of 3L Place come only 2 or 3 days a week. So they choose their schedules according to what other things they have going on in their life. So as my son is fond of saying, I drive my own bus. Uh, when you self-direct, you're in the driver's seat. Self-direction gives you more choice, flexibility, and control. It is a replicable model. That doesn't mean it would be replicated in an identical fashion. There are different filters here. At 3L Place, we, um, we've chosen a 1-to-3 ratio, and we are a highly mobile community. So individuals that have a high level of mobility challenge, we're not a good fit for. Or individuals who have complex medical challenges. We don't have a nurse on site, and those individuals should have a nurse on site. So we're not a good fit for that. Um, People with lots of regulation challenges who need a higher ratio of support, we're not a good fit for that. But the thing about self-direction is there should be many opportunities for different providers to create programs that serve the population that they want to support. And one of the things I need to say here is because we are a more expensive program than traditional services, so a family who chooses 3L Place and they have the same budget as somebody in a traditional program, which has a higher ratio and a less well-trained staff, they will likely get 5 days a week at that traditional program, but their funding will only pay for 2 or 3 days a week at 3L Place. And that's where's the rub? That's where the choice comes in. People are free to choose whether they want 5 days of X or 3 days of Y. And likewise, individuals with more significant needs would have higher budgets because their assessed needs would qualify them for higher budgets, which could support a program that had a nurse or could support a program that had a 1-to-2 ratio. So there are different filters that can be applied to the 3L place model that can accommodate different populations. Um, I'm at the end of my Q&A. These are some pictures. Before I'll come back to this in a minute. I just want to share. This is the resource page I mentioned, the Life Course Nexus, and there are links to this. So I'm hoping that when you get the slides, it will have the links still intact. The Real Lives Law is the Massachusetts law. 3L Place, that's us. We also have developed a transition tools and tips resource guide that applies to Massachusetts, although a lot of things really would be national in terms of, when you're 14, you should sign up for this. When you're 15, you should sign up for that. And this includes things like getting on Section 8 wait lists. It includes things like signing up for Social Security disability and Medicaid health supports, etc. So that's what the transition tips and tools is designed for. Again, it's Massachusetts based, but I think I'm sure there are other resource guides in other states, but it could even be helpful as a beginning place to start. And of course, Life Course Nexus, you really can't go wrong by checking into that. So there'll be a nice, you'll see more pictures. And I am now waiting to be joined by the person who's going to help me with questions.
That's me. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you.
That was incredible. Thank you so much. I know that our audience is listening in closely, and it's been such a gift to hear all of this that you've had to share with us. Um, are you feeling okay and ready to jump into some questions?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll have a sip of
Um,
water.
have a sip of water. Why don't you take your slides down so that everybody can see, and then
Okay.
we'll jump right in.
All right.
Thank you again. That was amazing. Um, so I've got a couple of questions here about a lot of different things that you covered, and we'll just have a little conversation. I think first, folks are a little curious about this incredible program that you built and all of these amazing people you had to partner with and community you had to build. And I have to imagine it was a lot of work. There was a lot of logistics, a lot of planning. How did you manage business planning, community planning, and being a parent at the same time? You've got this son who's kind of on the cusp of transitioning between adolescence and adulthood, and you're realizing this need that he will continue to have as he's growing older. What was that like for you, kind of straddling both sides of that?
Um, I I'm a heavily resourced person, and by that I mean I have a lot I have a lot of energy. And my professional background, I'm a really good manager of projects. So I don't know. And I'm just really determined. I I hate to say this, but because terriers are not my favorite dogs, but I'm a bit of a terrier. And so uh, I'd much rather be, a golden retriever, but I'm not. I'm a terrier.
Yeah.
So um, I don't know. I I have a lot of passion. My son's a real source of inspiration. Um, I spent, I've been nurtured and by my years as part of the floor time DIR community. So
Mm,
I kind of I knew what I wanted. I knew my vision came pretty easily, frankly.
yeah.
Um, and by and large, it stayed pretty true. I mean, we've gone through, I originally was hoping we would actually have this life college with a 2 year live-in thing, and then we transition to a community program, which is kind of what we have now. And first 2 years of the life college was just a total disaster. And it was just way too much,
Yeah.
way too much to manage. And the resources we had were insufficient to manage a 24/7 facility. And instead of being able to focus on learning in the morning, you'd be dealing with the aftermath of what happened the night before. So in 2016, we became 3L Place 2.0. So
Mm,
um, I just kept putting one foot in front of the next. And
yeah.
um, uh,
It it's a really good segue actually, Deborah, to the next question, which it has to do, I think, exactly with that, putting one foot in front of the other. We hear a lot from caregivers of neurodivergent people, autistic people, people with disabilities or developmental differences that, in the early years, it's very much about kind of addressing what's right in front of you. What is the big need that we are facing today? Is it about school? Is it about getting our shoes on and getting out of the door? Is it about managing family life? Is it about kind of all of the joy and opportunity that is right in front of us right now that we are savoring, right? And I'm curious about the kind of shift when you started to think, oh, we have to be a few steps ahead here. We have to be thinking kind of what's coming down the pike, or what happens when my son turns 22, or when we are having fewer supports and services. And I'm just wondering what that was like for you and your whole family to kind of make that shift.
yeah, I think as I said during my conversation with Ricky, it's quite a journey, and you go through different phases of this journey, and I don't quite remember, and I know this is not politically correct to say, but early on, I wanted to save my son. I didn't want him to be autistic anymore, and every time that there was a setback in that vision, it was very demoralizing. And
Hmm.
at some point along the way, it shifted. And I said, what's the song? Love the one you're with. It's, I began to really just love my fellow and appreciate um, his true neurodiversity. He's different. And I'm better for it. And so I think, and that probably began to happen around age 12, 13, or 14. So that gave me
Yeah,
some breathing room.
right, right.
And even though there were absolutely challenges, you know, along the way, and my son had a number of health issues, but I'm also a planner. So I'm always looking ahead. So for me, once I had some breathing room and I said, you know, this is my guy and I'm going to support him to the best of my ability to have the same opportunities my daughter has. I just started to look ahead at what opportunities those might be.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Oh,
and I don't, we, we're all very different people. And um, I'm very thankful that I'm a terrier in some ways because it just helped me push through.
yeah, I understand that. And there's a certain kind of relationship between that terrier part and the part of you that learned to kind of have the breathing room that you talked about. Um, that's beautiful. Okay, we've got a couple specific questions from folks in the audience. One attendee, Olivia, is asking, what do you think transition teachers and teams, those specifically teachers who work with kids 18 to 22, could be doing more in their programming and curriculum to support students and families when they leave school services? What's missing? What can these teams be doing more?
Well, and transition education has come such a long way since my son went through it, which basically didn't really exist when he was making that transition. Um, and I think, and it's probably different in different states. I think there needs to be a bit more honesty and share of information between the adult system and those who are providing transition supports. So, um, because the parents I talked with are just shell shocked. They just, and these are parents coming through now. They just are so unprepared for this drop off.
Mhm.
And I don't think I actually think it's more the responsibility of outreach by adult programs, but if they're not going to do it, maybe it's more outreach by transition educators
School.
to
Yeah.
better understand how they need to prepare families for how different things are. I do like that. I love that life course framework thing. I think trying to get families to engage in that process, where
Mhm.
making it real for them,
Yeah.
how much they're going to need to plan, and how I, you know, every part of this journey with a special needs kid is a lot of work. And I think parents are tired by the time their kids get to be 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And I think they think that things are maybe going to get easier. And so, um, in most circumstances, they don't. In most circumstances, they get harder. And I don't think people are prepared for that. Uh,
Mhm.
so I do think some great life planning. And I do think teachers supporting parents to engage in that, and teachers can support that as well. I mean, a lot of different people can participate in some of the life planning, given the again, I'm not, I just think that I love this program because I love the spirit behind it. But it's really got great tools.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess, keep up the good work, but uh, it's, it is, I again, I think there's very little transparency uh,
Yeah.
into the adult services system. So I think a lot of transition teachers don't really know what lies ahead. And I'm not sure how to write that other than maybe working through your Department of Education to try to build a better bridge
Hmm.
with greater levels of honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Maybe along the same lines of supporting families and supporting parents. We've got a question from a Profectum faculty member here, Chris Seminaro, who's wondering about the kinds of support that families get around self-direction. So, I'm guessing you have a lot to say, a lot of experience. She's asking, how are families supported in actualizing a self-directed model for members at 3L Place or maybe broadly?
Well, and I really can't speak to what goes on in other states. I know there's actually a lot of new activity being done in different states in self-direction. In our state, um, it's it's pretty messy. I think um, 3L Place currently is a unicorn in Massachusetts in that we're the only program that's a community program that can use self-direction. This is something I have been working with the department on for 6 or 7 years. That was why the image of the person pushing the walk up the hill is so meaningful to me.
Yeah.
Uh, I think self-direction should permit other providers like me to provide programming. That would be an easier step for families because they might say, I want this program. And then we work with families and kind of operationalize um, the self-direction programming within as part of our program. Most of the time, and this is very much the case in Massachusetts, um, individuals enter self-direction. They're basically told they need to develop their own budget, which they don't really even know how to do, and ne- uh, negotiate for that budget, find employees to provide those roles, because by and large, Massachusetts still sees self-direction as a one-to-one service as opposed to a community-based service.
Mm.
So it's very tough right now in Massachusetts. I do think that uh, we are trying to change, and there's there are a bunch of us who are really working hard to make that happen. Um, but moving large state institutions in directions that are different from what they've been doing for 20 plus years is hard.
Hard.
I'm hoping other states that it's easier, that the on-ramp is better designed than it is in Massachusetts right now.
This is another really good segue, Deborah. I I I imagined throughout your talk tonight that there's a really strong advocate there inside Deborah Flaschen, and she's been working hard with local policymakers to make some real change about what options are for people like your son and for families all over the country. I'd love for us to talk a little bit about that advocacy. Was that easy to come by in your terrier nature, or was it harder? And for parents and caregivers in the room who are maybe still finding their voice and kind of understanding that they can speak on the issues that impact their families, whether that be at a federal level or at a local government level, even at a school or community level. What would you say to parents who have an opportunity to be advocates for their own families and their own needs?
I think it's incredibly important to speak out, and we have in Massachusetts we have something called the um, Self-Determination Advisory Board, which was created by the Real Lives Law legislation. And I was just recently appointed to that board, which I was delighted because it gives me an official um, position from which to advocate. And there are a number of us on that board now at this point because the board has really changed fairly significantly over the last 6 years, who are sharing our strong views that things need to be changed. And I'm hopeful, albeit um, I know that uh, it will still take longer than I want it to take. But I do think that everybody should stand up and be counted. And that's one of the things we do with our parents at 3L Place. We keep
Mm.
them informed. We have briefings about what's going on. We encourage them to get involved, um, and I mean, I actually did. We did sue the state at one point over 3L Place, and
Oh,
and we ended up settling. We withdrew the lawsuit because the state gave us what we asked for.
mm.
But I actually ended up, I don't mean to say stalking the governor, but I put myself in a physical place where I knew the governor would be. And then I approached her with a small little portfolio of my ask, and she was very interested. So you again, I'm a terrier. So,
A terrier in you. I was just gonna say it.
um, but I think you have to look for your opportunities and um, and be strategic about it. But I actually kind of love that kind of stuff. Um,
Sure. And
so
some people do or are prone to it and some people less, right? But I
sure.
think there's an idea here that there is value in all family stories,
Oh,
and this idea of stand up and be counted.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things we do in advocacy is we gather people's stories.
Yep.
They're the most powerful influencer. And so, um, if you take some time to write your story, and share it with an interest group that advocates for something you believe in, it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
Deborah and Tyler, can I just say something? I think Deborah's being very humble. One of the things that families I don't think are armed with, if you haven't gone to business school or if you haven't had the opportunity to work in the corporate world, is not having basic advocacy skills, not having basic government relations skills, not having experience in that world. And there's nobody more invested in the success of their child. But unfortunately, the teams that we have built, the amazing people that are on this call, we don't have typically those skills either. And I think there's a real need for what Deborah has developed through, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. That is my son. I'll call him back later. And I think that what Deborah has developed through her organically, through her experience, isn't always available to parents. So I do think there's a need for developing basic advocacy skills.
Hmm. Okay. Now, as
Yeah.
I said, I am heavily resourced. I have my early childhood education. My father was a senior public sector person, so I've been what I'm doing in my life is what I was supposed to do with my life, I guess. So I don't mean to say that everyone has this set of skills, but I think what Cindy's talking to is this is an area where you can learn some of these skills. These skills are learnable, um,
Certainly.
and are teachable.
Mhm.
and they're incredibly valuable. I mean, writing letters to the editor is, uh,
Yep.
you know, I wrote a letter to the editor, which actually was the governor had, and I worked really hard on it, and I had a lot of different people edit it, and it finally got printed, and the governor, as it happened, had seen that, so that was a useful connection. When I finally spoke to the governor, she was already familiar with the issue. So um, there are lots, there are local newspapers. There are lots of ways where advocacy really um, can bubble up.
Yeah.
But Cindy's right. There's there's are skills to be taught and skills to be learned in figuring out how to do that. And some of it's just bungling along. I mean,
Sure.
you kind of try something, it works or it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Deborah, we've got about 4 minutes left. I am going to try to squeeze two questions in here. One I think is a little bit more straightforward, and maybe one a little that we need a little bit more time with. But there's a question from Marjorie here in the chat. She says, just curious what options there are for housing for your members. I understand that 3L Place doesn't address housing, but interested to know what the parents are doing. Are they organizing through your inspiration?
um, housing is a whole, that's not a short story. That's a long story. I have a, I've made a solution that works for our family. Um, again, um, my family has more resources than some families have, so I don't think it's generalizable to all people. Um, but one of the things we do at 3L Place is we share resources, and there are a couple of organizations that have come into existence that parents have created that do great work in explaining housing models and housing options out there and how to navigate Section 8 and how to navigate various other housing opportunities. So um, that's not my niche, but there are people in that niche who um, people should investigate, find out where resources are, and kind of sign on to uh, places that provide a lot of wisdom on housing.
Yeah. In our last few minutes here, you talked about 3L Place being a vibrant but small community and replicable. I'm curious what you would say to families of, I don't know, teens, preteens who are doing that first kind of look ahead that you've been talking about. Ooh, what do our next 10 years look like? Where are we going to go? What are we going to do? What kinds of supports could we need? You started this from just from that exact same spot. So what would you say to other families who might want to try to build something like 3L Place or organize and be with other folks who could support a community like that?
I So one of the things I struggle with, because I never imagined the state would make it as hard as it has. Um, so it slowed me down, which has cost a lot of money, because we couldn't grow to a size where it was more sustainable. So it's a complicated story. I'm hoping that by the time those 14-year-olds hit 18, um, that those self-direction options will be clear and there will be opportunities for families to come together to kind of create programs
Mhm.
like a thrill place. And one of the things I hope to do is share our share our model.
Yeah.
One of the things we're doing right now is with this curriculum is we're working with an AI company in an effort to kind of use that curricular guidance plus our lesson plans and make them available to transition age students for homeschooling and for adult programs that might choose to actually teach people things. Um, so, I again, the linking part of 3L Place has always been really, really important to me, and um, we're working on it. And passion is an incredible driver, and so
And we know there's a lot of that.
yeah, so
Well, Deborah, thank you. We can't express enough gratitude. This has been lovely. We really, really appreciate it.
well, thank you very much. I have had a great time, and I was really dreading it because I don't like public speaking. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I just want to join Tyler and really represent the Profectum community. Say thank you so much, Deborah, for sharing all of this with us. I know a lot of it will be very meaningful. I know people will be excited to get your slides and to dig deeply into what you're doing and spend more time looking at all the wonderful work that 3LP is doing. And I just want to say thank you for all the work that you are doing and have done, not just for tonight, but for what that means for families everywhere who can look at this as an inspiration. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm getting little flowers and hearts on up my slide, so I appreciate all of them. Thank you.
Well deserved. Everyone who was with us, thank you so much for being here. The Visionary Lecture Series will continue, as we said, in May. You could find the next lecture and sign up for it on profectum.org. We're so glad that you were with us. We will send out the slides and the recording tomorrow. Please join us again. These opportunities are only meaningful when we can all share them together. And so we are grateful that you are here and grateful that you are part of the Profectum community. We hope we'll see you soon.